I actually wanted to say something about Remain voters more than anything else. Many of my friends and colleagues voted Remain, and 16 million people voted Remain, in fact. And it's become tricky over recent days because I voted Brexit, and there's been something of an antagonism between Brexit and Remain voters to kind of get over whether you're in the Brexit or Remain camp. Can I just tell you now that it's a very boring conversation? I mean, I don't want to spend the rest of my life going, did you vote Brexit or Remain? But I do think there's a new division. Many people who voted Remain did so in good faith. They thought of themselves as internationalists. They believe in immigration. They wanted to change the world. They thought that those people who were voting Brexit were xenophobic and so on and so forth. But what we now have to recognise is there's a new division, which is those people who recognise that this was a democratic vote and that there's something positive that's been gained from it. And some of the people who voted Leave seem to me to be scared of the vote, and a lot of people who voted Remain suddenly can see some opportunities from it. So I'd rather kind of have a slightly different division in society. I also think, though, that one of the things that's really been shaken up by this vote is that we've learned something about the society we live in. Maybe that we didn't know before. I was talking to a leading scientist the other day, and she said, do you know, she voted Remain, but this is not to caricature her. She said, I don't recognise the country I'm in. I seem to not understand the country I live in. And I think that that's a tragedy, because what happened was that people imagined that those people who voted Brexit were, as one educator said at a debate that I was at, pond life and knuckle dragging their way to the ballot box. And I think that there's a reason why people did think like that, because let's consider some of the media issues. One of the people I know in the media admitted that when they went out to find real voters before the vote, when they were looking for Brexit voters, they kind of tended to go for fat women who had teeth missing. And I think we all saw those people on the television, right? Since then, they went out and they've kind of done this kind of like anthropological exploration, like Sky TV, and they went out and they interviewed all these people, and they said, oh, look, these are Brexit voters, and they seem to be like you and I. And they seem to be quite thoughtful. At least seem to be complicated. A German newspaper interviewed me today, and the guy admitted that he'd been going around interviewing Brexit people, again, a bit of anthropology, and he said, you know, there really are fascinating and interesting people who voted Brexit, which was funny because he was interviewing me. And I said, yes, I know. Anyway, the point I'm saying is that it's kind of like that. But I also think that, not to be smug, because I think that what we can all say is that I did not know about the kind of country I lived in either. Because the truth of the matter is, I went to a number of business events before Brexit, where people from the CBI and the Institute of Directors instructed bosses to organise meetings of their workers and to tell them how to vote. They said, get everyone together and tell people that they must vote Remain or they will lose their jobs. Right? So I imagined that what would happen was that the bosses, thinking it was serfdom, would get all the workers together, frighten them and say, you'll lose your jobs if you don't vote. But what did I think? I thought the bosses to get the workers together, tell them to vote Remain, and they'd vote Remain. I was bloody well wrong. Actually, I didn't know the kind of society I lived in, because actually we live in a society where people were brave enough, far braver than anything I had to face, to go against the odds, the whole of the establishment, every general, every corporate, everybody in power, and say, do you know what? We'll decide what kind of future we want to live in. So to finish off, we live in a much more interesting country than I realised we lived in, and my fellow citizens are much more interesting than I believed. I think the Remain voters are interesting. I don't want to caricature them as all metropolitan elite anti-democrats. I think that people who voted Brexit are interesting, and some of them are going to be traitors to the cause too. So I want to actually now use this opportunity, even though I'm scared, because change is scary. It's an unstable period. I don't think everything's going to work out really well, but I do think I've got a chance of maybe making something different. I think that possibly for once, we recognise that change is possible. And because I'm from the Institute of Ideas, I don't think you should ever just try and change things without discussing them philosophically and politically. So the Institute of Ideas, at least, will be trying to organise a range of debates and discussions about what democracy really means, what we really think about immigration, and to actually try and have a deeper understanding of the kind of society we do live in, but even better, to imagine the kind of society we might want to live in. That's why it's really great to be here tonight, and I hope that all of you will join in the rows and the arguments that happen, because that's what makes excitement and the future just, so much better than if we'd done what they told us to do and gone back into our boxes and nothing changed. God, I'm scared, but God, I'm excited.
Claire Fox from the Director of the Institute of Ideas.